we're going to be putting the spotlight on Africa. So the Africa data center market size by investment was valued at 2 billion US in 2020 and is expected to reach 5 billion US by 2026. According to a recent report by the ADCA, Africa needs a gigawatt and over 700 data center facilities to meet the growing demand and bring the rest of the continent onto level terms with the capacity and the density of South Africa. So today we've gathered a panel of regional experts to discuss the drivers for growth in Africa, how digital infrastructure is being implemented, and of course the opportunities presented by this growth. So I'd now like to hand this over to our panel moderator, Lee Perrin.
Thank you, Dean. So we've got a lot of ground to cover. Africa isn't a homogeneous region, and as we'll learn, has many supply chain dynamics, as well as huge opportunities that will be available as the digital infrastructure is deployed across the continent. So I'd like to just start by introducing myself, and then I'll look to the panelists to introduce themselves. My name's Lee Perrin, worked for CBRE for more than 10 years now. Really cut my teeth in the data center market in the UK. Now based in South Africa, and I head up the data center solutions business across Africa. So if we can kick off, just short intros to our panelists. Ladies first, Juliet.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here. I'm Juliet Ehimuan, and I lead our business at Google across West Africa.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the previous panelists for an extremely inspiring session. Really enjoyed every second of that. Very happy to be with you today. After having serving as MD for Telecity for 14 years in Europe, I have now been heading the development of Africa data centers. Currently the largest Pan-African data center operator. And again, very happy to be with you today. Thank you.
Hi, good day, everyone. My name is Tunde Coker. I'm the Managing Director of Rack Center, a role I've been undertaking for the last about 7 years now, building Rack Center into the leading carrier-neutral player in West Africa, and trying to unlock the addressable market, and in Nigeria and West Africa. I'm based in Lagos in Nigeria, and I've been back here now for 12 years. Prior to that, my entire career had been in the UK. I was born in Nigeria, and great to have been back over here and getting engaged in the African digital infrastructure scene. Delighted to be here. Thank you.
If we start just going through the panel, what's different about Africa? I'll look to you, Tunde, just to sort of take us off on this one.
Africa is about 1.3 billion people, about 54 countries, all very, very different actually, but all very, very same and incredibly charming in different ways. People who've lived here, been here, do say. But there's some interesting parameters as well. It's a very young population. Median age is typically around about 20, in some instances 18, generally around about 22. The very north of Africa, the higher median age is the very south of Africa, higher, but by and large, very young. But the interesting thing about Africa also is it's about 15% of global population, but only 4% of global GDP. And it's what I call the prosperity gap, right? And if you look at data center infrastructure, we only have about 1% of installed base. A whole confluence of things coming together to drive significant growth there. And interesting difference, so finally, is the business models in Africa. It's shown if you get the business model right, it can be very, very lucrative indeed, especially the mobile phone operators have shown that. And the reason is this: the sachet economy I sort of talk about sometimes. People tend to buy things when they can be bought efficiently in small bits. And the way you now sell technology in small bits is through cloud. And there's going to be a huge increase in demand for cloud technologies as all of these SMEs and so on start to use bite-sized technology to drive their lives, to drive their businesses, And I think Juliet might sort of identify some of the dynamics of growth that they've seen. So from that point of view, it's different, but it's unique in also a fantastic geophysical location and an incredibly bright young population.
No, agreed. Juliet, Stephane, do you want to add into that differences?
Sure, Lee, I can just add the fact that it's interesting as well, just to Tunde's point, the fact that 6 of the world's 10 fastest growing countries are in Africa. That's Ethiopia, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Benin, Tanzania, and Rwanda. And there's a projection from the Africa Development Bank that the region would see 4.1% growth this year, despite the pandemic. We're also seeing that the growth fundamentals are improving. There's been a gradual shift from private consumption towards investment and exports. And for the first time in a decade, we're seeing investment accounting for more than half the continent's growth, with private consumption accounting for less than 1/3 last year. So it's really a growth region and lots of opportunities.
Right. So yeah, Stephane.
I mean, nothing. Really, the thing I would like to second, just to be fast, is what really struck me when I arrived in Africa to work, because I've been in Africa every year of my life and born there actually. It's the potential in terms of dynamics of these young peoples, because it's very different. The level of creativity, the level of willingness to do things, and sometimes to do things in a different way, to leapfrog, to really make things differently, and to create an African way, has really astonished me and is making me happy every day, because we, providing digital infrastructure, are providing the homes, the shelters for that creativity and dynamism to express itself.
No, very interesting. Yeah, so let's talk around the whole anticipated growth, right? And what are the drivers for this growth? Juliet, if you could lead on this, I think.
Yes, sure. As I mentioned earlier, there's a projection that the region would grow by 4.1% this year. And I would look at the growth drivers in 3 buckets. I would say that by far the biggest driver for growth on the continent is the digital economy. And that's from the perspective of growth and value creation. If we look at statistics from the previous years, we'll see that the digital economy is growing a lot faster than the total economy. So for example, if we take a 10-year period from 1998 to 2017, the digital economy value add grew at an average annual rate of 9.9%, compared to 2.3% growth in the overall economy. And this has been sustained through the pandemic. And also in 2019, while we saw a decline in investment in most sectors like oil and gas and mining, we actually saw an increase in tech-based investments. So this is just really an important consideration when we think about growth on the continent going forward. And there are some enablers to this. So Lee and Tunde talked about, the population talked about mobile technology. Mobile has been a very interesting phenomenon on the continent, and it's been a great driver for growth because it provided an opportunity to skip landline infrastructure deployments, which would have taken longer and would have also been subject to some of the systemic challenges in the environment. It's also a great example of the dynamism that exists on the continent and is really fueling the digital economy, because at the moment, we're seeing a lot of solutions that are driven by mobile being birthed on the continent. We've also seen acceleration in mobile adoption. Mobile phone subscriptions have grown in Africa from 87 million in 2005 to about 1.2 billion just last year. And that's 20% annual growth. It's really showing up as the fastest growing market in the world when we think about mobile and the rate of adoption of mobile solutions. I mentioned a lot of innovative solutions really coming up. One of the interesting things about the continent is the fact that, yes, there are some challenges, but on the flip side of every challenge is opportunity. And with the digital economy, we've seen a lot of tech entrepreneurs, developers, players, just really stepping up to provide solutions to actually tackle different aspects of the ecosystem and drive growth. And that's really creating growth and opportunity. For example, one of the opportunity areas has been financial inclusion. And we've seen a rise in fintech organizations just really offering a range of services to close the gap. And a lot of them attracting, in the last couple of years, we've had some phenomenal investment stories, just really validating those business models. Another important driver for growth, I would say, is just Africa's large deposits of natural resources, just really offering opportunities in developing value chains. So for example, we know that Africa hosts 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land, controls about 54% of the world's diamond resources, and a number of other examples in terms of just mineral resources. The final bucket I want to touch on is what Lee also mentioned, and Tunde, about the population. It's been mentioned, so I wouldn't say much, but it's one we can't ignore. The fact that all these developments and growth is really being fueled by Africa's growing youthful population, which is quite different from what you find in other parts of the world where you have aging populations. And the World Bank estimates that by 2100, 1 in 3 people on the planet will be living in Africa, and it would be home to the largest base of young people in the world. That, of course, represents a growing consumer base and a bulging middle class. So these all point to strong drivers for growth.
Tunde, Stephane, do you want to just add in on that?
Yeah, that's opportunities to leapfrog as well. And just building on what Dean and the previous chat spoke about in terms of sustainability, we have a great opportunity to leapfrog in that as well. There's a challenge. We need to energy Africa as part of the growth, and we need to digitize Africa. So those kind of two things go together. And the opportunity we have is to leapfrog in that in re-energying Africa, getting it done, and digitizing Africa. We bring those two together to do it in a sustainable way and in a creative way, so that we actually leapfrog the world. And right from the start, we start to implement some of those opportunities or some of those challenges on sustainability that we've been talking about elsewhere. And Africa has lots of natural resources, lots of hydro, solar. Its opportunity to combine energy mix to be more efficient is significant in the context of digitizing Africa.
No, agreed. Stephane?
Yes, it's still on that context of growth of the digital world, the digital means. What, in my view, has been driven the growth over the last 2 years, and is also going to be one of the key drivers for the growth in the coming years, is that combination of, one, the readiness for highly mature African enterprise to use cloud services, to be able to develop new services, work differently on one hand, and on the other hand, the actual arrival of compute platforms from the cloud operators and their capacity to actually meet that demand. And that's what I call the magic moment for digital development in Africa. It is happening now. And that is going to be a very, very big driver for the growth that's coming.
So, Juliet, you touched on the opportunities piece briefly there, but let's look at where are the opportunities for investment, and do these opportunities depend on government providing enabling environments, right?
That's a great question. And the interesting thing I was saying about Africa is the fact that there's quite a lot, there's a huge entrepreneurial drive. There's a lot of creativity and dynamism on the continent. And this is being applied to actually flip challenges into opportunities. And so some of the areas for investment are areas where we've seen the private sector really energized around creating solutions and creating sustainable and scalable business models. And as a result, we've seen a rise in investment into the space. In 2019, based on Partech and WeTracker, the investments into the tech space in Africa was projected to be about between $1.3 to $2 billion. Now, some of the areas, one would be just solving financial inclusion. I talked about the rise in fintech organizations that are really doing well. And from a financial inclusion perspective, this ranges from solutions around credit scoring, mobile payments, funds transfer, loans disbursements, and so on. And we've seen a number of very strong players emerge on the continent, just really leading the way and pioneering great solutions. Some examples that have come up in the last, actually within the last few months, Paystack was acquired for $200 million. We have another example with Flutterwave, a payment processing startup, which had an investment of $170 million. And at 5 years, Flutterwave is already more valuable than a lot of traditional banks, even some of the country's biggest banks that have been in existence for over 10 years. So that just really speaks to the amount of opportunity in that space. And then still talking about using tech-based applications to solve local problems. We're seeing a lot of that emerge in this agricultural space. Obviously, agriculture is a huge opportunity area and continues to be so in the region, a huge driver for job creation as well. And we're seeing solutions emerge around just enhancing the agricultural supply chain and using digital tools and platforms to boost productivity in the sector. We have players like Tomato Jaws, FarmCrowdy, and a host of others. We're also seeing opportunities in healthcare, opportunities in telecoms. Again, post-COVID, one of the realities is the fact that there's an accelerated move to embracing digital transformation. And with that, clearly there's an opportunity around just providing robust telecoms infrastructure. And a lot of countries have really accelerated their digital transformation, and we're seeing telecom giants really looking to build new networks, streamline existing facilities, speed up connectivity, and just improve internet and wireless services as well. There are opportunities around e-commerce, obviously, given the change in consumer behavior and just in favor of more online transactions, and also digital skills provision. We talked about the huge population. Now, when you have this huge population and then you have these great digital solutions to local problems that can scale, because another thing the continent has is scale, then you also have an increased demand for digital skills to be able to engage, to be able to provide services and so on. And we're seeing interesting models, for example, Andela, just really looking at creative ways to either export talent or aggregate talent to solve various projects globally. And so a lot of these just really speak to being very creative around looking at the opportunities in the environment and developing business models and solutions to actually tap into those. And I think it's also worth mentioning the fact that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is also going to be an enabling factor in just stimulating growth, cross-border trade, and helping to fuel some of the startups that I mentioned. Now, to the point about governments, yes, a lot of these developments do require an enabling environment. But the interesting thing is the fact that these opportunities in themselves are solving for the enabling environment when we talk about telecoms infrastructure provision, when we talk about skills development and fintech solutions and so on. So the private sector has been very, very much energized around just being creative to develop commercial solutions that actually in the process help to build and stimulate the ecosystem. But for sure, structure, broadband services, 5G networks, policies that encourage tech investment, cybersecurity, and ICT patents, and just national strategies to encourage digitization and technological disruption of various traditional sectors. And so we see this as a partnership between private sector and public sector. But it's very encouraging to see the speed at which the private sector has been moving on the continent.
From the guys, how do you see this from a sort of an operator perspective?
I think from an operator perspective in the business we're in, a significant amount of opportunity to support that growth. Right now we're really underserved with respect to data center capacity. Maybe we should go and get some of that, additional capacity Tim was talking about, transfer it. But it's a significant amount of opportunity in the region, really, for growth, and to underpin that growth. Lots of people talk about edge and sort of lack of latency. The realities of the customer experience demanded by people on the continent will just make it a no-brainer to be much closer to the point of use. As far as customer experience management is, and that's why you're finding some of the growth, the new cables coming in Equano to Africa. There are reasons that are driving those developments, but particularly though is other aspects of digital infrastructure. Companies like Liquid Telecom are really connecting Africa, making some amazing progress south to North Africa, getting through from east to West Africa. And as you start to get that develop, what Juliet was talking about with the Africa Free Trade is really going to develop, the interconnected countries. Just like with mobile telephony, we leapfrogged the landline architecture. I believe you'll find the same thing with digital interconnectivity, and it'll much better interconnect the continent. And I think what's happened with the COVID and digital enablement in the last 18 months is going to be a demonstration of where that opportunity is. There's also some other interesting business models. I mean, technology is really showing how we can transform agriculture. And also, given Africa's geophysical location, it just sits in there to very, very well interconnect and optimize global networks or the global content providers, and so on. It's a great location at which point that you sort of dissect the world. And also, it's you have Anglophone and Francophone Africa. The accents in Anglophone Africa very clearly recognized. Same thing with Francophone Africa on the same continent. So you'll see business process outsourcing really start to take hold. And those are the kind of things that are big drivers for employment. So some of the issues we see now really with respect to the middle class, the growing middle class, with respect to maybe as areas of disenfranchisement or of different forms, I think they will start to be addressed as these opportunities really take hold on the continent. And it's starting to happen. You have American companies outsourcing business processes out here. You have European companies doing the same. So there are lots of opportunities for growth. That comes back to that question you asked, that will again drive the growth for one, interconnectivity infrastructure and data center infrastructure and cloud.
Stephane, I'll probably put the last question to you. What are the opportunities we see in Africa with regards to the tech for good, right? So what we currently busy implementing?
It's enormous, and it's actually one of the reasons why I have decided to come back to my continent of birth and share my experience of data centers. Because yes, I mean, I had an organization who wants to be profitable and to continue its growth and serving its customers. And that's absolutely fine. But beyond a job, every morning when I wake up, I have the joy of having a mission in addition to a job. And digitizing Africa really goes beyond business, because we are talking here about giving, as I was saying in introduction, that capacity to a hugely dynamic and creative youth into really bridging what sometimes appear as a little gap in the international competition for Africa. And what we are doing with infrastructure is helping the African peoples bridging that gap. And that really is worth, a very, very lot of happiness in every morning. So that is really our mission as an industry collectively. Now, individually, as a company, and listening to those amazing projects that we have heard in the first session, I was saying to myself, that's great, and we need to go in all of those directions. And in addition to that, let us not forget that each and every one of us, individually or as a company, can do something, even if it's small. But adding up all those small things can make changes. So, typically, I sometimes get pretty annoyed when people are asking me, but how are you dealing with the shortage of skills in Africa? And my answer is always the same: there is no shortage of skills in Africa. Absolutely not. There is as many skills and as many skilled people as everywhere else in the world. But it's that combination of skills and depth of experience into building and operating data centers that is sometimes missing. So, we have decided that we would put as a pillar of Africa data centers education and training. We are actually a training company. Because we operate data center and we need for that, obviously a lot of people to maintain and technicians in data centers, and we have created Africa Data Centers Academy, and we are especially recruiting young people coming from underprivileged area, giving them the chance to share our luck of being in such a growing industry. So we just really make sure that not only do we participate in education, but we also include in our dynamism some people who otherwise may not have had that piece of luck. And then in terms of sustainability, each and every effort we can make is going to serve, is going to help. And we are using solar on each and every of our data center, each and every of our, we currently have 10 projects of data centers all over the continent that we are going to launch in the next 12 months. And solar is used everywhere. We actually include how we can optimize the solar surface in our design of our data centers. And that is something that every one of us can do. And also, we should think about water. As some of the areas we operate are not hugely rich in water. And as an example of things that we can do as an industry in our Cape Town data centers, for the water we needed for the cooling system, we not only we didn't use any city water, but we actually put a system in where it creates water it takes the moist of the air, the atmosphere, and creates water with that. So we filled in all our tanks and all the water that was necessary with in natural means without taking the community's resources. But beyond that, that system also allows, once we've got the water we needed, to continue producing water and share it with the rest of the community after proper treatment. So, we are all here extremely happy to participate in all those conversations about what are the next big steps. But it's also important to remind that in our industry, it's also pretty easy to do a lot of small steps every day to participate to our communities and be more responsible, inclusive, and to participate more to the countries where we live in general.
Agreed. Juliet, do you want to add anything there before we go to questions?
Sure. I really think that I do agree with Stephane. I think technology can really represent a force for good on the continent. And, when we take some of the use cases, for example, I talked about financial inclusion. If you just imagine the, deprivation that people that are excluded from participating in the financial space, what they must experience in terms of just access to credit and so on. If we're able to provide solutions through the fintech initiatives that close that gap, that really offers a lifeline for these users and makes a huge difference. Again, in the area of skills development, we know that digital just really provides the power of information at your fingertips, which can be very empowering. It can uplift people out of poverty. It can help people to, at little or no cost, just have access to really valuable information that can solve, health, personal, other challenges, even with business as well. So being able to provide digital skills at scale, and there are a number of organizations that are doing this. It's one of the initiatives that we run as well. Currently, training 10 million people with digital skills across the continent. So that also represents a huge opportunity to just empower people and make it possible for them to transform their experiences and expand their businesses beyond borders. So these are just some examples, but I think really technology offers a huge, bedrock for growth, for empowerment on the continent.
I just add a couple of other areas to that as well. EduTech, the opportunity in that, and also healthcare. The potential of transformation in healthcare on the continent is significant. Access to much more sophisticated health without having to limiting sort of level of infrastructure you need to build, but then leveraging expertise from all around the world, to deliver healthcare on the continent. I think those will be transformative in terms of technology for good on the continent.
Agreed. Okay, so I'd like to now give the opportunity to attendees to ask any questions. Just please ask any questions over the chat, and then we'll try and best answer these. I see there's one question that's come out already. One for you, Stephane. May I ask what training is provided? Is it your in-house team, or does it span the wider industry?
So there are no data center technicians available immediately. Not a lot of them actually in Africa. So what we do is that we identify, again, in underprivileged areas, some young people that have done 2 years, for example, of electrical studies or mechanical, and then we gather them in sessions where we do a full data center technical training. Some of it is being done by outside people, outside specialists. Some of it is being done by us. And basically what is being done by us is everything that makes the link we have external companies coming and do the electrical, the mechanical training, but we will do everything around quality, around the health and safety, around everything that is data center specific. And then those young people immediately come in as interns, and after another 3 months of being an intern, they become employees.
Very interesting. So we got another question here to all the panelists, so please jump in. How do you suggest we accelerate the leapfrog efforts to apply the best practices in Africa? This is just a unique opportunity. So basically, how do we go faster, right?
I'll have a short. I think there's a natural a proven tendency to move quickly and to leapfrog. Necessity is the mother of invention, and that happens quite a lot here. But nevertheless, I think the awareness, encouragement of linked with investments that really look at how we can get these leapfrogs quickly and quicker, I think would be a catalyst for that. And, the kind of discussions we're having here and the kind of members we have in iMasons, for instance, could also be, I guess, a win behind the sails of making this happen a lot quicker by just getting that awareness, getting that education, and driving the kind of investments that will allow us to make this happen quicker. Perhaps, investments linked to aspects of sustainability. So that is taken in as part of the mission to drive digital infrastructure growth.
Another question here. Africa is the largest continent. Are there regions or specific countries which are more ready than others for the data centers and the digital transformation? I think, Stephane, that's probably one for you, right? You're going into the continent now and you're seeing various forms of readiness, let's say. What's your view on this?
Any judgment made on any answer made on that question is going to change in the coming 3 months, 6 months. What is sure is that one can, identify some hubs in which actually we are deploying core data centers, and analysts, such as Broad Group or Xalam, I've said that maybe probably the 5 key hubs would be South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Egypt, and Morocco. So those are certainly developing. But there are other countries that we need to keep a very close look at, because GDP is a component of that growth capacity, but not only. And in my view, we should have a close look at, again, population, as Juliet has mentioned, because young population is going to drive a lot of technology, which will require data centers. So we are also very much looking at that criteria where we are making our expansion plans on the continent, and as such, a country like DRC cannot be ignored.
No, agreed. So we've got another question here. So obviously the iMasons has great momentum with scholarships to attract talent, globally. And Stephane, you just mentioned there isn't a talent shortage, but just the experience on that shortage. How can we drive that in Africa? I think the question is pretty much, how can we pretty much leverage this iMason scholarship in Africa? Is there any thoughts to the panel?
I can take that. I think I would agree that there isn't a talent shortage in Africa. It's a region with a very young and talented population. And what we need is just a lot more capacity building, particularly digital capacity building. And what we've seen from our experience, and I'm sure a lot of organizations would say the same thing, is that when we've provided access and just basic tools to people in the region, they've gone on to do great things. We've seen, great successes leveraging digital platforms to export, for example, African creative content to the rest of the world. We're seeing African entertainment content and so on. We're seeing applications being developed. We're seeing businesses just going beyond borders and all of that. I think in addition to that as well, opportunities that foster collaboration and best practice sharing. So tech hubs, I think, are a very important vehicle to just really drive that knowledge exchange and cross-pollination of ideas. Seeing more foreign direct investment, because one of the beauties of this, beyond the financial investment, a lot of these organizations also bring a certain level of global best practices, intellectual capacity as well, and just support in developing and moving these organizations to the next level. So I think that's very important as well. So these are some of the ways we can just really ensure that we harness the talent that exists, we nurture that talent, and just help them to go on to do great things.
I got one for you, Tunde. You have one of the largest data centers in the area, right? What's the lessons you've learned in the last year?
Yes. Wow, lots. It's been really quite a remarkable year. And in terms of having to be able to respond very, very quickly to the, in a way, the challenges of the COVID situation, but in another way, the opportunity to really serve customers, and really also being able to having to really innovate in everything you do, just change the ways, think differently. We've been expanding, so we've got capital work ongoing right through the process where you have global supply chains disrupted. You've had, just to be creative with respect, bringing engineers in on the work that we needed to do, and so on. So you have to keep going despite the challenges you have. But what we've seen though is that although there wasn't this huge sort of uptake as you'd expect, there was more optimizing of capacity sort of available because of things like travel restrictions and so on. However, what we've seen coming out of it now is the increasing demand starting to come through. So the key lesson really is just having to constantly innovate, figuring out how to get around on the challenges we have, and continue to move forward. And also, actually, we had the opportunity to serve customers. They didn't have to think about digital infrastructure. What they needed to do was think about their business. We gave them the support. We gave things like free remote hands. For instance, their engineers and staff could stay and not having to travel to worry about their data center infrastructure. And it really allowed us to get very, very close to our customers and also reach out to those that are not customers yet and demonstrate the benefits of outsourced co-location.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think COVID has really sort of put the data center market in front in many aspects. Juliet, there's a question here for you. You driving the Next Billion User Initiative in Africa. How is Google enabling this to happen?
Thank you. So there's a whole team driving the Next Billion Users Initiative. And it's based on the premise that at the moment we have about just over 7 billion people on the planet, and about 50% of the world's population is connected. However, the next wave, the next billion users coming online are going to be from emerging markets like African markets. And so this region would really be a huge contribution to the next wave of internet growth. And there's also an understanding that users in this part of the world have some unique requirements and attributes that may be different from Western markets. So for example, the fact that you can't take broadband access as a given. And quite often data is expensive for the average user. And so people try to preserve and conserve their data. So if you're building applications, for example, they need to be lightweight. They shouldn't really consume a lot of bandwidth. You shouldn't require huge steps before people actually get to the final destination, things like that. And so the team is just really focused on understanding the unique requirements of users in Africa, and then building solutions that are really tailored to those unique requirements. So looking at, for example, lighter versions of some of our core products, looking at digitizing information, for example, traffic information and Google Maps and things like that. And, just looking at other unique and new solutions that are designed specifically to address the needs of this market.
Interesting. I think we've pretty much almost at time now. I don't know if there's any other questions. I think definitely the education piece is coming through on the chat. Really keen to see where that's going to go. Any other thoughts to the panel?
I just picked up one around the online education, and that could have a huge impact over here. So it's something that I think we really should explore putting in place, and could be hugely impactful indeed. Great idea.
The last comment I see on the chat, something around learning and providing much needed experience. And I was just going to double click on that and say that we've seen some great examples of people just leveraging digital tools to transform their experiences completely. One of my favorite examples, and there are many, is an Olympic gold medalist, a javelin athlete who self-taught how to become an expert in javelin by just watching tutorials online, looking at how his colleagues around the world trained, etc. This is someone from a modest background who could not afford a coach, and certainly not a world-class coach, but he got world-class coaching by leveraging those tools, and went on to win the Olympic gold medal. And we have a lot of such great examples across the continent.
Yeah, inspirational, absolutely. Hey, and thank you, Lee, Juliet, Tunde, and Stephane, for your amazing insights. And by the way, Stephane, thanks to you and the African data centers for taking the leadership role in the iMasons Africa Chair Up chapter. So I think this is all going to be about us coming together. So, and again, I just love this panel. I have a lot of things I want to touch on really quickly. First is the growth that you mentioned, Juliet. 6 of the fastest growing countries are in Africa. That's just crazy when you think about the concentration. And then Tunde, you mentioned that we need to energize and digitize Africa. Then you look at it, mobile first, leapfrogging there, cloud adoption, it's going to enable business to accelerate. And other efforts should enable Africa to leapfrog the rest of the world, really. So this really is a unique opportunity to learn from the rest of the world and apply those best practices now to enable that leapfrog. I really believe that based on what you guys are talking about. It's just huge. I also love the statement that there isn't a talent shortage. There's an experience shortage. There's plenty of talented people. We just need to give them that experience. And just one follow-up on the scholarship side, iMasons has awarded over a dozen scholarships to African applicants already. These are mostly the online things that we're talking about, Juliet and others. But we need to add zeros to that number. We need a pipeline of talent. We have a mechanism in which we can do that from our professional association here. So we should double down on that. And Jeff and Simon with our executive directors should be able to help with it. So we'd love to leverage the local chapter and your leadership here on what we can do to actually do that. And finally, Stephane, you summed it up really well. I think this is a magic moment for Africa. A magic moment for Africa. It's just, I can't wait to see what's going to emerge here, right? And all of us are going to be in that whirlwind as we go forward. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for everything in this one, Lee, and for driving this panel and putting this together, because again, very, very interesting insights that I learned a lot from.